Welcome to TimeXtender Tuesdays. We will be recording this session so you can share it with your friends. Please understand that all of the attendees are muted. If you have a comment, please put it in the chat. If you have a question, put it in the chat, and we will be monitoring that throughout the presentation. In the next 30 minutes, we'll have a short demonstration, take your questions, and play Stump the Chumps. We hope you have as much fun attending as we have had putting this together. With us presenting today is TimeXtender's Solution Specialist Director, Joseph Treadwell, and Taylor Hagan, also a Solution Specialist, is helping out. In just 15 minutes, Joseph will walk us through creating a TimeXtender application server in Azure. First, he'll deploy TimeXtender App Server, then connect to it the virtual machine with RDP, and finally download and install the latest version of TimeXtender on the VM. Joseph and Taylor will then take your questions, so put them in the chat. And then if we have time, we'll play Stump the Chumps. It's going to be fun. So with that, on to you, Joseph.
The first portion of the series here, we're going to be focused on creating this reference architecture. So the TimeXtender reference architecture in Azure. You can follow along in the knowledge base. So if you go to the knowledge base, you'll find this reference architecture with Azure SQL database. I'm just going to go ahead and open that up so you guys can see what that looks like. This is a knowledge base article. All the steps I'm going over today are included in this, and what we'll be going over the next few months here in these sessions. Now, as you can see, the very first step in all of these is to create the app server. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Following that up, we have creating a project repository in an Azure SQL database. Then there's creating a data lake, creating a data warehouse in SQL DB. Of course, creating and using Azure Data Factory to ingest and transport that data. And then also creating an analysis services. So I'm going to be doing all of these in live sessions for you guys. Look forward to hearing your questions as we go through. As Jay mentioned, if you do have questions as we go through, please do put those in the chat. So let's go ahead. Before we get started, we do have a few prerequisites we need to make sure we take care of. Of course, you need an Azure account, right? You need to be able to have access and permissions to create resources in the Azure account to be able to do this. You need a license key for TimeXtender, and you need user portal access. If you don't have user portal access, you can reach out to your TimeXtender representative, and we can go ahead and make sure you can get access to that. But that's where you're going to have all of your license keys and ODX secrets that we're going to use in just a minute here. So these are the steps we're going to cover today. First of all, we're going to sign into the Azure portal. We're going to deploy the TimeXtender App Server Marketplace template from the Azure Marketplace. We're going to go into the TimeXtender user portal, where we're going to obtain our ODX secret and license key. We're going to connect to the virtual machine using RDP, and then we're going to download and install the latest version of TimeXtender onto that virtual machine. Again, as I mentioned, all of the steps you can follow along online here. If you go to this link here, create a TimeXtender application server, and all these links are being posted here in the chat window if you guys want to follow along. This, again, another KB article here in our support site. And again, all the steps are covered in here, so feel free to follow along there as well. Okay, on to the first step. First things first, we need to get signed into the Azure portal. So I'm just going to go to portal.azure.com, and we are going to, in the search bar here, if you type into the search bar, you can simply type in TimeXtender application server, and this should pop up. You see that on the right here under Marketplace, we have TimeXtender application server. The nice thing about this global search here in Azure is it's not only going to search for all of your personal resources, it's going to search for a lot of resources you may not have yet that maybe you want to add, but it's also going to search the marketplace for third-party resources as well. So because we have our templates available in the marketplace, you can just search directly in the Azure portal here and have those available. So you go ahead and click TimeXtender application server. This is going to bring you to the front page with some descriptions here. And then when you're ready, you just go ahead and click create. So creating this marketplace template is going to create two resources for us. The first resource, of course, is the Azure VM, the virtual machine. And then the second resource is a SQL server, an Azure SQL server. So that resource itself, standalone, doesn't actually cost any money. It's really just kind of a placeholder. It gives you a server name that we're going to go ahead and use a little bit later for creating our project repository. And you can also use that same SQL server for your MDW database as well. So first things first, what you want to do is you want to decide on your subscription. So here I'm using my CSS subscription that I have here, and then you can pick or create a resource group. I'm going to go ahead and create a resource group here. I'm going to call this TX Tuesdays 1. All right, click OK. And the next thing is you want to assign a region. Now, regions are important in Azure because this is where everything is stored in a data center, right? So Azure has data centers all over the world, and choosing your region is choosing the data center where all of these resources are going to get created and stored initially. Oftentimes they'll be replicated across many regions. However, initially they do get created in one. And it's good to try to keep all of your resources, if they're going to be talking to one another, try to do your best to keep all of your resources in the same region. This is going to speed up processing times. If you're moving data across a continent, for example, that's obviously going to take a little bit longer than moving data across a single data center. So for mine, I'm going to go ahead and pick West US 2 because I am on the West Coast. And then we just pick a name for our virtual machine. I'm just going to use the default here. The next is to put in some settings for our SQL server. I do have a username and password already picked out here. So we'll just put in there my username, and then I will get my password and paste that in there. Okay, good. You can enable advanced threat protection. It's not required. And then allow Azure services to access this server. You want to select yes for this. Of course, we're going to be communicating from our VM into this Azure SQL server, so we'll want to allow that access. Next step is the settings for our virtual machine. Again, just putting in my password and username here. I'm just going to use the same exact username. And these are the usernames, the username and password you're going to use to sign into that virtual machine the very first time. From then, you can obviously get it hooked up to Azure Active Directory. You can create your own usernames and manage those from within the VM. But the very first time, you'll need to use this virtual machine username and password. Now, in terms of the size, we do have a standard recommended size available for you here as part of the template. I think this is a great place to start. This is a relatively inexpensive machine here, has enough power to run, a small data warehouse. So it's a great place to start. If you need to scale up from there, you can absolutely do so. Here are just some initial placeholders here for the storage account for diagnostics, public IP address, and then the DNS prefix. So I'm just going to leave these as default. And the next step is to review and create. It's going to do some validation here, walking through the steps, making sure everything's good, and then I can click create. All right. So we've gone through the process of deploying our virtual machine in Azure. This is going to take just a couple minutes. While this is running and creating these various different resources, what we can do is we can log in to the user portal, and we can get our ODX secret and license. So we'll just open a new tab here, and you can type in portal.timextender.com. And from here, you can log into your account. As you'll see, I'm actually already logged in. But what you'll find here is, some company information. We can go to basic info. We can see here company information. Oftentimes you can find your partner's name in here if you need any support. But what we want to do is we want to get our license information. So we can click this drop down here under my company and click licenses. So here I will find my TimeXtender license. This is just a temporary license I created for this demo. You can see it expires in just a few days here. And I can copy this license, and I'm going to go ahead and just put this in a notepad right here on the side so I have that available. We will use this in an upcoming video where we're going to be configuring TimeXtender in this virtual machine. So now that I have my license key, the next piece that I need is my ODX secret. So here I can click the drop down under ODX, click on repositories, and then I have my client secret for my repository here. Yeah, so you just click to copy that secret. And again, I'm just going to put this over on the side, my secret. So I can have that later. Great. So I got my ODX secret and my TimeXtender license. Step number 3 is complete. The next step is to connect to the virtual machine using RDP. So let's go back to the Azure portal and let's see how our deployment is going along. Okay, so it's still running, but it usually takes just a few minutes here, few more minutes to get this created. So it looks like we did have a question come in into the chat. Can I see all of my customers, clients, secrets in one portal, or do I have multiple logins? That's a great question. So you cannot see, if you're a partner and you're managing customers through the portal here, you cannot see, you know what, that's an interesting question. You may be able to see them. If you go into customers, I actually don't have that option here because this version of my account doesn't have any customers, but you should see an option up here, customers. And if you click on there, you should see their ODX secret on their company page. So you should be able to see that initially. If not, that likely means you may need to sign in as a customer, get a user account created under that customer company, sign in as the customer, and then you can go in here. But you can. Okay, so I see you posted that there. I appreciate that. I know I can, but obviously I have a little bit elevated rights. But it seems like, yeah, other partners can as well. So that's good to know. You can get access to the secret there. All right, so it looks like our deployment is complete in Azure. So the virtual machine has been created. I'm going to click go to resource group. So this is the resource group. As you remember, I created that name TX Tuesdays 1. It just added all of my different resources that I just created here inside that resource group. Now, as I mentioned, it is going to create a few different items, 2 items specifically that are important to us, that SQL Server and the virtual machine. All of these other pieces here, the network security group, public IP address, network interface, disk and storage account, and virtual network, these are essentially artifacts of the virtual machine. In order for the virtual machine to function and communicate with the outside world, we're going to need a public IP address, a network interface, these different pieces. So these were created as essentially as prerequisites for the virtual machine or the application server. Awesome. So we can click on TX App Server here and just click connect. So there's a number of ways to get connected to this app server. First of all, you want to make sure that it is running. We can see the status here is running. So the app server, the virtual machine is online and running. As I mentioned, there's a couple different ways you can sign in. You can just open RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, on your computer, and you can put in this DNS name as the IP address or computer name. And then you can put in that username and password that we created during the initial creation steps here and log in that way. Alternatively, you can just click this connect button and click on RDP, and you can download an RDP file. So this is just going to download an RDP file with that DNS name or address already included in my settings. So I can go ahead and open this file, which will bring a prompt here. Okay, do you trust this? I'm going to say, yes, I trust this. Don't ask me again. Go ahead and connect. And then the next thing it's going to do is it's going to ask you to sign in. So it's initially going to attempt to use my local credentials to sign into this VM. This is Windows 10. I don't want to use my local credentials because my local credentials aren't stored in that VM yet. What I need to do is click on more choices and use a different account. And then I can paste in the username and password I created when I initially created this virtual machine. So I'm going to copy that username and password that I created earlier. Username and then my password. And I'll just say remember me and click OK. So now it is, keeps jumping over to my other screen. Again, it's going to ask to trust the certificate. Do you want to trust the certificate? I know it's coming directly from Azure. I created it. So yes, I'm going to say, don't ask me again, and go ahead and trust the certificate. So now it's going to continue connecting and move it over again. If I can get this to resize for me. Okay, good. So now I'm logging into the virtual machine. It is the first time anyone's logged in, so it's setting up my user account, my desktop, things like that. And that takes just a few seconds here. So we can see that on the VM does come pre-installed. The nice thing about using the template is that it does come pre-installed, as I mentioned, with all of the prerequisites and with TimeXtender. The thing is of course, we're coming out with improvements and additional functionality on TimeXtender all the time. So every few weeks, you'll see new releases coming out. And of course, being this as this is a new application server, we want to install the latest version of TimeXtender to get all the latest fixes and security enhancements available to us. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the TimeXtender support site and download the latest version. I'm going to go ahead and just initially delete these shortcuts from the desktop. We're going to open Microsoft Edge here and go through our first time user prompts. Let's see if this will sign me in. Okay. I don't care. All right, so open a new tab here, and we're going to go to support.timextender.com. And of course, this is where you can get all of the knowledge base articles that I've been mentioning. You can see that reference architecture is right here, as well as downloading the latest version of the software. So just go to support.timextender.com. And right at the top here, you can see under Getting Started, download TimeXtender. So this is going to go to the page where we always keep this up to date with the latest version. So you'll be able to find the downloads for the latest version right here. So currently we're on 20.10.14. So I'm going to go ahead and download the ODX server. And I also want to download TimeXtender. Okay, scanning for viruses. I'm going to double click to open the file. And then from within the zip file, you can actually just double click setup and it'll run directly from there. You don't need to unzip it first. You can just run it right from there. All right, so this is going to walk me through the initial installation steps for the ODX. Click next, I'll accept, and I'll go ahead and click complete. You'll notice for the ODX, it's really just one option here. So typical, custom, and complete all really do the same thing because we only have one option in the ODX portion. Click next, and we will go ahead and click install. This is going to install the latest version of the ODX service. I'm not going to launch the ODX server configuration. We're going to go ahead and you do the configuration during the next session. I'll just click finish. I will go ahead and close this one, and I'll open TimeXtender and set up TimeXtender as well. Luckily, the installation process really only takes a few seconds for TimeXtender. Here you do have some options. You can go to custom and choose what you want. I'm going to go ahead and just include everything. Here, this is the scheduler service and the server service. And I'll click install. So that'll get TimeXtender installed. And now we'll have the latest version of TimeXtender up and running on the server. Great. So I believe that completes all of the different steps that we had here. Yep, connect via RDP and download and install the latest version of TimeXtender. All right, so that's how to create an application server in Azure. I hope you all enjoyed that. I know we have looks like we have about 7 minutes left on the session. Do we want to open up the floor for any questions? Jay, I'll go ahead and let you take it over.
Nice work, Joseph. That was great, the way you ripped right through that whole thing. And I think Taylor's been doing a great job of answering the questions along the way. So let's go straight into Stump the Chumps. If you guys have any history listening to Car Talk, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you've never listened to Car Talk, well, I'm sorry, because you really missed out. Anyway, we're going to have a little discussion here about a question that maybe will stump Joseph. It's hard to imagine that anybody could stump Joseph, but we're going to give it a try and see if we can't stump the chumps. So Taylor, do you want to jump in and get us rolling on that?
Yeah, I'll invite Anishek Kamal to try and stump us here in a moment. I did want to touch on one question from Rory Smith, Joseph. His question was about creating a new resource group upon deploying the template. It used to be a requirement. Is that still a requirement, or do we see that as no longer a requirement?
I have to go through the setup process again to see that. It looked like the dropdown was available. I didn't click through it to check, but I can go ahead and look into that and try and get back to that. Get back to you on that one.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks. We'll follow up with you, Rory. So at this point, Anishek, I would love to invite you to kind of walk us through a little bit of what you've been seeing. I know we talked earlier in the week. There were a few issues that I think could be really interesting for us to talk through as a group. Welcome to the Stump the Chumps for the first time ever. How are you today?
Yeah. Hey, Taylor. Hey, Joseph. Yeah, I'm good. How about you guys? It's been really good week for me. We have been going through this a lot. So yeah, I'm doing good. Okay.
So there were a couple issues that you had touched on. Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and kick us off with what you're seeing?
Yep. I do have a couple of questions. So the first one is that this is like an issue with the query table, and like new fields are not showing up, right? So I did implement I went through a couple of steps to implement this. The first one was created a query table, in the ODX. Then it was working fine with the MDW, but adding the new fields was kind of it was not showing up into the MDW. So yeah, that was kind of my first question, why it was not happening, even though I created the query table in the ODX and MDW was working fine, but it was not showing up on the query, right, on MDW.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good question. Now, what is so Anishek? First of all, great to meet you. Where are you from, Anishek?
Yeah. So currently, I'm in India. So yeah, I'm taking this call from India, and I've been trying to learn TimeXtender as much as possible, and I have been trying to explore it. I have been having multiple calls with Taylor and trying to bug him, and so yeah, that is from where I got these questions, for this call. So yeah.
Oh, very cool. It's so great to see we have this, global community with users all over the world, and we're able to connect like this and have these sessions. That's so cool. So yeah, again, thanks for joining. Thanks for the question. The ODX, as you're mentioning, is having an issue with query tables. Could you elaborate a little bit? What is the data source that you're currently using with that connector, or with the query table? What data source is that?
So yeah, so right now, for an example, I'm using some like sales transaction data that I'm, uploading the data from. So it's just, some sales transaction, some, customer data that I have. And yeah, the fields are showing up in the preview table when I load it, right? But yeah, that is like kind of happening. So the data source you can like right now I'm using is a SQL Server.
Yep. SQL Server data source. Got it. All right, so let me pull up TimeXtender here real quick, and let's see if we can walk through it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a few steps that you can use on your own to try and diagnose this and hopefully get around the issue. So as you're saying, as you're mentioning here, and I believe I do have a SQL Server data source. Yes, this is a SQL Server data source that I have here. I can go to Manage Query Tables. Oh, that doesn't look. I might need to do some updates here. And essentially, if you have a query table in here, and you make changes to that query table, you need to make sure that TimeXtender and the ODX is reading those changes and refreshing based on those changes. So there's a number of steps you can do to make sure that TimeXtender is doing all of that. First things first is you want to resynchronize. So running this synchronization will take a look at the query table and ensure all the fields that you've written in your query are available in that data source. The next thing is you want to go to your select tables and select columns options here. And you want to ensure, and again, I need to update this data source, it looks like, but you want to ensure that the query table that you've created is included in your select tables and your select columns. Typically by default, these are just select all, but you want to go and select all is okay, but you want to go through and make sure you're not filtering out any tables or columns here. So you want to synchronize, ensure you're not filtering them out. And then the last and final step, and this hangs up a lot of people, maybe you already have the MDW or that query table mapped into the MDW, right? In which case you should see the available fields here. But what happens is, let's say you add a field to your query table, you add another field to your select statement, you synchronize, but that field still isn't showing up in your data movement pane. So how do you get that? Well, you need to communicate to the MDW that there's been changes in the ODX, metadata changes. And to do that, you do have to run what's called the synchronize objects. This is like the older traditional in the business unit where you had to synchronize a data source. This is how the MDW synchronizes its metadata with the ODX. So the MDW is aware of certain metadata, certain fields that are available. You need to make sure that you're communicating that across from the MDW, from the ODX into the MDW by doing this synchronized object. So we do recommend you do that on occasion, and especially if you're making any changes to query tables. I hope that helps you with your issue, Anishek.
Yep, definitely. I think that is what I was missing because I was not synchronizing the objects in the ODX server. So yeah, that is what I didn't do. So yeah, I got my answer. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
that is awesome, Anishek. Thank you very much for the question. And once again, we have failed to stump Joseph. We're going to have to work harder between now and 2 weeks from now to come up with a question that Joseph can't find the answer to. So it was a great effort, Anishek. But Joseph is a formidable competitor, and we're going to have to try harder next time. Yep. Okay. I just want to thank everybody. It's 9:31. We're going to let you go, but thank you very much for attending our very first TimeXtender Tuesdays event. We hope you had as much fun as we did. And our next event will be 2 weeks from today, when we'll be configuring the TimeXtender environment in the app server. Watch for your inbox. We'll be sending you a link to this recording so you can share it with all your friends. and an invitation for the next event. So thank you very much, and have a great Tuesday.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.